right? So ultimately, we do have to write our software in some computer language, and we do have to know something about it. But for example, we don't need to, you don't necessarily, you can be a great programmer and only know a little bit about a language. When we did Python last year for automatrons, we learned a very small subset of Python. We did not know very much Python at all. I still personally do not know very much Python at all. Mr. Dan knows tons more Python than I do. But still, we were able to be very effective, right? Because because that's not the only aspect of programming. It's just one aspect of programming. So, so obviously, the more we understand about all four of these areas, then the more we're gonna understand about programming, or the better a programmer we're gonna be. If as we know more about all four of these areas, then we'll get to be a better programmer. All right, so I'm gonna stop talking because that's boring. And how are we doing so far, Alejandra? Have I lost you?
No, I think I got it.
Okay, good. All right. This is great. This is the best way to learn, small groups. All right, so let's switch to, let's actually go and do a little bit of Java just so we see what the heck it is. All right, off the ground a little bit. Whoa, what's it doing? Okay, all right. So what I want you to do is go to this website, Replit. Have you been there? This is what we used with Python last year. But this website supports more more languages than just Python. It actually supports lots of different languages. So if you can go here to this repl.it, let me know when you get there. Oops, I don't want this. I get it myself. Okay, there we go.
Wait, this is JavaScript, right?
So all the time, people, including myself, all the time get Java and JavaScript mixed up. So because they have practically the same name, but they are in fact very, very different languages. This is Java. JavaScript is what we use to program inside a web browser. But this is even though we are inside a web browser, I don't know. Anyway, this is Java right here.
Okay. I am here.
Okay, great. So just like with the, and you're doing Java, right? Not, you have to link. All right. So anyway, so over here on the left-hand side, right, we've got this. These are our files. Right now, we only have one file. It's called main.java, and then over here, this is the content of that file, and it's got a lot of gobbledygook in it that nobody knows what it means. And then over on the right-hand side, this is where the output goes. This is, I'm sure you must remember this from when we did a little bit of Python using this at the start of the year last year.
Yep.
Good, okay. So if we want to run our program, we can click on Run. And it will take much longer than Python did to display its results. And finally it does, and you can see it displays hello world. Did it do that for you? Oh, wow. Who's here?
Kachkan, that's my daughter.
Oh, yeah, right, of course.
Yeah, she's just now joining in. So maybe in the chat, I'll type the website.
Okay. All right. I don't know how much further we're going to go, because if I go much further, then I'll have to go over all this for Cayenne anyway. All right. So you got to run, and it says
when I try in that website, it says like it shows the very first screen. So do you create an account, log in, and then you see this bar?
Yeah, you don't necessarily have to create an account. Actually, you can just do it on your own. Let's see if so if I'm going to go there myself here. So
Because just follow along and go to this website, okay? We just got started.
yeah, so this is REPL.IT, and then you can just say start coding. You can click over here or over here, start
Okay.
coding. Select the language that we're doing, which is Java. Say create REPL,
Okay.
and then you will get there.
Yes.
Okay. Everybody there?
Mm-hmm. Yes, because did you get till here? Give a thumbs up if you got it. Yes.
Okay, good. All right. So on the left-hand side, we have our files. We only have one file right now. This is the content of our file. It's called main.java. It's got a lot of stuff in it that nobody knows what it means. And then over on the right-hand side, this is the output. When we run our program, it's going to print some output over here in this part of the screen. And the way that we tell to do something is we click on the run button, and when we click on that, and after it thinks for a little bit, we'll say hello world. Okay, so everybody should have that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so so what is some of this stuff here? This finds a class called main. We will talk about classes for a little bit. We won't talk about any of this stuff for a little while. There's a function called main, so we're not going to talk about any of it. Main thing that we want to see here is that this is a way of printing something out, just like the print statement in Python. And inside these parentheses, this is what it is that we wanted to print out. So if I wanted it to print out, hello, Coach Ken, I would just edit this right here. See if I can type, Coach Ken. And now when I run it, instead of saying hello world, we'll say hello, Coach Ken. So we can put any value. This is a value here. So a value is any number or a string. So if we wanted to print out like the number 42, we could say system.out print line of 42, and it will print out. First, it will. What do you think it's going to happen here, Alejandra? If I run this program,
It's going to print out 42.
what's it going to do before it prints out 42?
Print out the hello Coach Ken.
Yep, right. That's right. So So this program is going to do two things. It's going to print out hello, Coach Ken, and it's going to print out 42. And so we run it, and and sure enough, that's what it does. All right. I will talk a little bit about comments. So if you may remember from Python that we like to put comments in our code. It helps us know what we're doing. It helps explain to a human. So we have to make the computer understand what it is that we're doing, but it's very important to help other humans or even ourselves when we come back and look at our code to understand what's going on. Java supports two kinds of comments. It supports a single line comment, like which we do with two slashes like that. We say two slashes and we say print out some text. Okay. So the computer ignores what we put after the slashes, but obviously we're able to read it. It doesn't have to be on its own line. We could do something like this. 42 is the answer to everything. Right. So we can put it like after that. there's another form of comments which so so this comment says that this line, these two slashes say that this line is a comment, so the compiler is supposed to ignore it, but Java ignores what we put there. But then the next line, it doesn't ignore, right? It pays attention to. If we use slash star instead of slash slash, and as many lines as we want to, you know, all these lines are going to be ignored by the computer. So if we want to have a multi-line comment, then we like to do it with slash star rather than putting slashes in front of every line. So we might say something like, this is a sample program, and put maybe today's date, something like that. All right, so before we quit programming, are you like, wow, this is cool, how do I do something? What do you want to do now?
What?
You know, we have this tiny little fragment of a program, and maybe you have a question about it, or maybe you have like, well, this is, you know, it's nice that you.
Why does it take, for Java, why does it take longer to execute than Python?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay, so Python is what's called an interpreted language, whereas Java is what's called a compiled language. So let me write those words down so you can see them. All right. So Java is compiled, Python is interpreted. So what that means is when you run a Python program, so this gets into understanding how a computer works a little bit, right? At the bottom, there's an operating system like Windows or Macintosh. So if I make a Java program, this Java program sits right on top of the operating system. There's nothing between it, right? It just runs right on the operating system and does its thing, right? But here's my, you know, like main.java over here. How does that become this, right? With Python, what you have here is Python. The Python interpreter. I'll write the word interpreter out here. So it's the interpreter that sits right on top of the operating system, not your program. What happens is, you know, if we had like main.python, if we had our code here, this file, this is a file. Actually, it's called main.py. Okay. This is not either. Okay, so we have a file called main.py, and what happens is we just tell the Python interpreter, hey, read my program and run it. And so Python just reads as little as possible, just reads like the first line of your Python program and just starts chewing on it and just doing it, right? Whereas with your Java program, what happens is in here, the mystery thing, whoops. This mystery thing is called the compiler. So what happens is you take your program, you feed it into a compiler, and that changes it into an executable program. And that's what sits right down on top of the operating system. So, did that make any sense? So the reason why it takes a long time is because when we're writing Java, it has to compile the whole, so it has to, when it compiles, it has to read the whole program, everything that the program includes, all the libraries, everything, you know, and then it has to compile, so it has to, you know, read everything. All your files have to be read in, interpreted, understood, processed, you know, right? Okay. Then it has to, so that's called compiling. Then it generates an exe file, an executable file, and then it finally runs the file. It runs the exe file. So it's got to do all those steps. The interpreter just, you know, reads as little as possible. Let's just say it reads the first line and starts, and then just, you know, does it. Right? So an interpreter is usually going to be more immediate. So right, you're going to get more immediate feedback from an interpreted language because it doesn't have to do all these steps, right?
And wouldn't it be more effective to just use interpreter instead of compiler?
Right. So why do we? But so there's a difference between faster response, faster sort of initial response, and faster faster performance. So once you go through all right, yeah, maybe this is good. So let's see. Oops. All right. If I change my code, if I change the stuff that's over here in main.java, I have to go through the whole compiling thing again, right? And then I can run it. But if I don't change what's in main.java, like, you know, like I write a web browser, I write Chrome, right? Well, people run Chrome a gazillion times without going through these 3 steps, right? They download it onto their computer, they install it. They never go through these 3 steps, right? They're always just coming straight here. And so once you pass these 3 steps, your program is actually going to run faster the second time, right? Every other time that you're trying to run it, other than whenever you don't have to go through these 3 steps, because you don't have this interpreter between your code and the operating system, right? Here you don't with Java, you don't have that. You're just sitting right on the operating system. And so as long as you're not going through this step, your program's going to run faster than that program. Does that make sense? All right. So, all right. Is there anything else? Any other questions we can go over? How about let's come back and make it to something a little bit more interesting before we leave. All right, so let's make it print out what all right. Let's say that we want to compute the area of a rectangle. So now we're going to sound like math class. Okay, so we're going to have one value. So we can do this. What's the formula for the area of a rectangle?
Width times length.
Right. All right. So let's say that we want to print out the area of a rectangle. So gosh. Anyway, whatever. What's the width of our rectangle?
5.
All right. And what's the height of our rectangle?
7.
All right, good. So what we have to do is we have to multiply them together, right? Right?
What? Yeah.
We have to multiply them together. So the way that we multiply in Java is it's just the same actually as what you do in Python. You use an asterisk. So this says that we're going to print out 5 times 7. And so we can run that, and eventually it will say 5 times 7. I mean, actually, eventually it'll say 35. Okay. Good. So, so this is called an expression, and there are. This is called 5 asterisk 7 is called an expression. And so it's 5 times 7, that's an expression. And the asterisk is called an operator. And the 5 and the 7 are called values. Okay. So next thing we need to learn about is variables. Okay, so there are other, well, let's talk about other operators. So, do you remember any of the operators from Python? How do you add two things together?
You use the plus sign.
Right. And subtraction?
The minus sign.
Right. Stars multiplication and division?
The slash.
Exactly. Very good. All right. So those are some of our mathematical operators. So these are the mathematical operators. All right. And we can create expressions using them, and they can have as many values or terms as we want. So we can have, you know, 1 plus 2 times 3 divided by 4, you know, plus 6 plus 9. That's an expression. We can group terms by using parentheses, just like in math class. Okay. Sure. Okay. All right. another thing to note that's different from Python is that we use these semicolons. I don't think we ever use semicolons in Python. What that does is this is called a statement. So we've got a whole bunch of terminology coming here. So this is called a statement. And every statement ends with a semicolon. And the reason for that is the semicolon tells Java that you're done with the statement. So for example, we don't have to put this all in one line, right? We could say 5 times 7, right? And this is perfectly valid syntax. Java will accept this. In Python, you wouldn't be able to do that because Python doesn't have the semicolon to tell it where you've ended things. So, all right. Anyway, so there's that. Statements, expressions, semicolons, and all right. I'm a little bit hesitant to go any further because I'm not having Cayenne here. But all right, I'll just say a little bit more. It probably won't hurt to hear it a second time when Cayenne's around anyway. All right, so variables. You may remember that I like to use this analogy of a box. I say variables are like a box. Do you remember that? Okay, so okay, so like a box. And the box has a name. So in Python, we would say something like this. We would say something like score gets 20, right? And this would define, so this is Python. And this would define a box or, okay, name, that's a lid on it. And it would have a name called score, and it would have a value, which is 20. So you can think of it as having a 20 inside this box, where the box is named score. Okay, so that's Python. Now, Java is very similar. Okay, so it has names and values, but it has another thing too. It has something called type. So in Java, we can't say score equals 20. That would not be valid syntax because Java would be like, I don't know what score is. I don't know what type this of date. One of the things with Python, we can put a 20 inside here, and then a little while later we can put true, which is what's called a Boolean value. And then later on we can put the word 3, or oh, that's too confusing. We can put the string Fred. Java, as Python doesn't care that you put it, these are all different types of things. Fred is what's called a string because it's got quotes around it, it's text. Right? 3 or whatever, or 20, I guess we had. 20 is a number, obviously. True is what's called the Boolean value. And these things, these are different types of things. They're represented inside the computer in different ways. It's one of the things that we're going to discuss eventually, trying to understand the computer. So these are different types of things, and Python is perfectly happy to let you put all these different types of things in this box, you know, not at the same time, but whatever. But which is great, right? Because, and that's what makes Python so, one of the things that makes Python so popular is because it's so easy. So easy to use it. You just declare a variable, you throw a value in there. Later on, you say, oh, I don't want a number, I want a string, I want a temperature, I want a whatever I want to put in there, I can put in there, right? But the problem with that is that if you're trying to build something that's like so important not to have bugs in it, like something that's going to fly an airplane, or something that's going to keep track of your bank account, something like that. These are things that you want to have absolutely rock solid, no bugs. And the problem is that when you're looking at your program and you see something about score, you're like, well, what is score? What can I do with score? Right? Because you can do different things with a string than you can with a number, than you can with a Boolean. You can do different things that you do on one are not valid on the other, right? And so it's important to know what score is. And Python doesn't give you any help, right? If it's all on you, the programmer, to remember what the heck you put in the box so you know what you're doing with it. Which is, and again, the problem with that is that you can't find out that you made a mistake until you actually run the code. Until you run the code and you run the line of code that has a problem in it, Python's not going to tell you that you made a mistake. In Java, you have that name, you still have the value, but you also tell it what type it is. And in this case, it's an integer. And so in this case, and so what you do is you say, you can't say score to this. You can't say score equals 20. You have to give it a type. You have to say integer score is 20. And so, and that will work. So now you have a name and a type to go along with your value. And now when you want to know, hey, what kind of thing is score, the compiler is more than happy to tell you, oh, that's an integer. Now, when later on, if you try to put Fred into that box, if you try to say score equals Fred, it doesn't wait for you to run this code. When you're over here compiling the code, or where did it go? Up here. When you run this code through the, so now you wrote that code, you wrote score equals Fred in main.java, and you try to run it through the compiler, it says, no, 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 no. You can't do that. It doesn't wait to run the program. So if I say over here, and you can try, you should try this too. So let's say we have a variable called integer score. That's called a declaration. All right, so that's declaring a variable. It defines that box. Doesn't put a value into it, but it tells Java what that box is. And so now we can say score equals 20. And Java's like, sure, score equals 20. Beautiful. You can print out the value of score. But then when we say score equals Fred, okay, go on here. Score equals Fred, it'll say no, no, no. And it won't run up. So if this was Python, what would happen is it would print out, hello, Coach Ken. It would print out 42, it would print out the 35, it would print out 20, and then it would tell you that you had an error. With Java, it won't actually run the program. It won't display any of those things because before it runs the program, it compiles it, It tells you, hey, you know what? Incompatible type string can't be put into an integer box. And that's a big difference between Python and Java. And that's a little bit about variables.
Mhm.
Okay? All right. You think we've had enough for tonight?
I think so.
Okay. If you're like, no, 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 I have a burning question that I need answered right now, I'd be happy to stay.
I don't really have a question on top of my head.
Okay.